God do you feel about talking about your sexuality on camera?
I feel good about talking about my sexuality on camera. I was looking forward to it. So my job makes me feel like this is a really important thing to be like very visibly proud of. I'm an intimacy coordinator for film and television, so I often end up explaining it like I'm an emotional stunt coordinator. So a lot of what I do is like reduce shame and stigma around these topics and sort of demystify them and talk about them very casually, very informally, but with respect. Particularly like how subjective those things are. When we talk about them in like very abstract terms, it perpetuates the idea that there's like a normal.
When did you first discover your pleasure?
I remember, I think I was like 8 or 9, and I was sitting in the backseat of a car, and I think I was wearing jeans, and I remember just like shifting very slightly and being like, whoa, what is that? I somehow knew that that was not something that I should like indulge in, maybe like in public.
Did you start masturbating?
I think it was 14. I didn't think it was bad. I wasn't like embarrassed that I was doing it like it was like some secret. But I do remember thinking like, I better move my hand before I fall asleep, because if I die or something, if I die or if someone like walks in while I'm sleeping, they'll see that my hand is here and they'll know what I was doing. Yeah. And it wasn't shame like I shouldn't be doing this. It was just sort of like, I don't really want that to be like the last thing that someone ever thinks that I was doing.
Did your parents talk to you about sex?
Yeah, in very clinical terms. I remember being in the back seat of my mom's Mitsubishi Montero when I think I was 9 or 10. I think I just asked, like, where do babies come from? And she explained to me, like, a man puts his penis in a woman's vagina and then, like, she gets pregnant. And then I think she did say, like, and sometimes people just do it for fun. And I was like, why? But then there was very little conversation around like sex as pleasure or like sex as intimacy or connection. My parents had a healthy sex life. They're still together. They still really like each other a lot. And I do remember like hearing them having sex a couple times as a kid. But there wasn't like a whole lot of talking about sex.
Do you have a sexual orientation?
Do I have one? I like that question because I kind of want to say no. I've resisted labeling my gender and my sexuality because I think that generally those labels are like for other people, to like help other people understand you. But more recently, I've started to feel like maybe refusing to label my gender and sexuality has been a way to avoid actually examining it. And so I've started to like openly state that I'm queer and I consider myself a member of the queer community, and that's gender and sexuality. And I like queer because it's just like so vague. And if you want to know what that specifically means for me, you have to actually get to know me. But I also felt like saying no because I feel like it does change. So when I am faced with like the prospect of stating it, I kind of prefer to just abstain. I think one of the myths about female sexuality that I felt limited by was that women will fall in love with anyone that they have sex with. I even like took that myth and kind of was like, I like this guy that I was like dating in college. I was like, I like him. I don't know that we have like super intense chemistry. He's older than me and he really likes me. So I sort of like deferred to his judgment on that. And then I was like, well, I should get more attached to him if we have sex. And so we had sex and I was like, yeah, I still don't feel that way. And at the time, I felt like, am I not a normal woman? Is there something masculine about me? And is there something wrong with me? I quickly realized that it was actually that this idea that women fall in love with anyone that they have sex with was a patriarchal form of control, opened the floodgates of like, what else do I believe consciously or subconsciously that is propaganda, essentially? How do I figure out like what is actually right for me and not a social construct?
What initially attracts you to someone?
The way that they walk. Yeah, the way that someone like carries themselves. I feel like it says a lot about someone's like confidence and how they want to like be in the world. Safe sex means consent in like an ongoing way. And really that's something that's like very new to me. And I've had plenty of sex that I would consider safe where consent wasn't happening that way. But now that I've experienced affirmative ongoing consent, it's just so much sexier and so much more fun, and it feels very safe, very comfortable and very safe. When I started training for this job, I was like worried that I was kind of ruining myself for future sexual encounters because I was going to be like, my bar was getting raised so high. Like, I was getting like pickier and pickier about like who I was going to welcome into my space and into my body. And I was practicing all this consent stuff and I was like, man, this sounds like the kind of thing that like most people would be annoyed by. But actually, if someone is annoyed by that exact way of talking and engaging, they can fuck off. And it's like a really good filter. I really like rules. I think I used to think that being submissive was like anti-feminist and anti-woman, and like the only way to be a feminist in a dom-sub relationship was to be the one in charge. But that was like a gross misunderstanding of like the entire range of possible dynamics within a dom-sub relationship. As much as I like have resistance to authority, there's something really hot to me about like consensual authority where I'm saying like, I'm putting you in a position of power. But as anyone who's ever been in a dom-sub relationship knows, the power actually lies with the sub. So I'm the one giving you the power and I can take it away. A lot of times a submissive person is in a very like powerful role in other aspects of their life, and part of what's so great about being submissive is that you just get to surrender. You don't have to make decisions anymore in a certain type of dynamic. And that's one that has become very appealing to me. So when I say I like rules, I'm like, I want to play with this. I love this because I want to like put this out on the bed and be like, what do you, like this is a menu. And then we set rules and we can, like what I would love is to like set a timer and be like, for 30 minutes, like you're here and I'm here. And then you like screw around with it. Some people really hate that. Some people really hate to like make those rules for themselves, but like that is what I want. The purpose of sex, yeah, I mean, I think I have sex mostly to feel connected. One of the greatest lessons I think to be learned from sex is the way that like being selfish sometimes can be the most selfless thing that you can do, and also like the most honest thing that you can do. When like something is for you and you are really in tune with what it is that you want, that's generally the most pleasurable thing for the other person. One of the best things about sex is making someone else feel good in your most vulnerable, like raw, exposed state. That feeling, I guess, is like the most alive that I feel. So when I get to do that with another person, it's this really cool like mirroring thing of like, I'm like watching you experience me, and so I get to experience myself through your eyes, and that's a really cool way to learn about myself.
If you could have this sex talk with you, Virgin you, what would you say?
It would be to trust her judgment. I think I've put myself in a lot of situations with older men in particular because I haven't trusted my own judgment and my own instincts. I was able to not listen to myself and like not follow my gut because I was giving them power to tell me what is real. If I could tell her one thing, I would tell her, like, your instincts are on. Like, don't stifle them. Don't second guess them. Like, what you are feeling is the reality of the situation. And you don't need to, like, defer to other people's judgment and, you know, what they want just because you don't want to, like, make decisions. Sex with men was really intimidating to me, and I think that I felt like I had to be a certain kind of woman, and I didn't. I would definitely tell her she doesn't need to like perform anything, that there's all different kinds of people in the world, and she can also be any different kind of woman that she wants to be. No two people are alike, so it's not really that big of a deal to have sex for the first time, because like it's the first time every time with somebody new.
Why do you think talking about women's pleasure is important?
I think it's an inherently political act. It's something that's been very deliberately silenced for most of history, at least in our culture. I think the fact that we haven't been talking about it has perpetuated that idea that like there's one kind of woman that men want. You know, there's one way to be sexy. There's one way, like one ideal body. And the more that we talk about pleasure, the more we understand that it's like, it's so subjective, it's so personal, it's a form of creative expression. And you can like, the same way that you can learn your voice as a writer or a painter or a poet or whatever, you can learn your voice sexually, and it can become an art form, really. But if people don't talk about it, then we just reinforce that there's like one or a very limited number of ways to do it. By not talking about it, we end up with things like Katie Hill. Like women being totally shamed and losing their careers and their lives because they've expressed any amount of interest in feeling good, learning to like love their own bodies, learning to share that with other people. Yeah, I think it's a pretty radical thing to do.